In this video, we're going to look at files, how to open them, how to close them, how to write data to files, and how to read data from files. Because really, programming is almost pointless if we can't store data in files. Because whenever we turn off the computer, we lose everything in memory. That's called volatile memory. But if we can write it to a hard drive, that's called persistent storage. It remains even when we turn off the computer. So this is pretty important to be able to store data long term, not just when the computer is turned on. So whenever we want to read information from a file, we would type in something like this. We'll start with our variable name, and we'll say open a file called input.txt. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how to create that file in just a moment. But what we have here so far is we're trying to open a file and then store the location of that file in a variable called numbers. And now's a good time. Now's a good time to right-click over here in your project window that you have. You may not have as many files as I do, but that's okay. Right-click on at the top here where you see IM, and look for something called Show in Explorer right here. If you're on a Mac, it'll look slightly different. But this will take us to the location on the hard drive where my file is stored. And you should, on your end, when you're watching this, you can save a file and it'll take you to right here when you click it. And I'm in the examples folder, and you'll want to navigate to wherever you have yours stored. See, mine is stored here under examples. Yours could be stored anywhere. It depends on what you called it when you saved it. So if we're going to read a file called numbers, then we need to make a file called numbers, right? So if we right click here, I'm right clicking in the white space here, and I'm going to choose new, and I'm going to choose text document. And I'm going to choose, let's see, numbers, I believe. No, I called it input, right? I can rename a file by pressing F2 and typing in the name I really want. And if we double click on this, we open it up. And let's put in some numbers. We're going to click Save. And then we're going to close out the file. If you're going to write software code, you really need to understand where your files are stored. If you don't, then what's the point? If you can't find a file that you made, then you need to back up and gain some basic proficiency with Windows before you can really write software code that interacts with the file system. And that's why I'm giving you this basic tutorial here. But you may need more instruction than this depending on your level of comfort with Windows or Macintosh and in the file system. So here, let's go ahead and continue. We've created our input file now, which we're obviously going to need. You can't open a file that doesn't exist, right? And let's just say we have line 1. Oops. And we're going to say numbers dot read line. And then we're going to, this right here is going to strip off the new line character. Back over here, every time we pressed enter to get to the next line, that actually, in ASCII, in the text file, is a new line character. And if we read this in, it will read in the number 43 with this sort of invisible new line character. In Microsoft Word, you can show those. I was looking here. I don't think we can in basic Notepad. But there is an invisible character here that signals that the text reader, that is Notepad, should go on to the next line. And this will strip that off. It strips off the new line character. We're just going to copy and paste this, whoops, a few times. I believe it was, how many numbers did we have? Let's check again and see. We had 4 numbers, so we need 4 lines here. We'll change these to line 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we will close our numbers file because we're done reading it. Whoops. Whoops, I still can't get that right, can I? Okay, and then we're going to print line 1. We're going to print each line. Okay, so let's see where we're at. Let's run this code and see if we broke anything. And it reads just as we thought. It reads each line. And we can see here that this matches up with our file. So this is a very basic way to read data from a file. Now you may be thinking, well, that looks good for now, but what if you had 2,000 lines in the file? Do you want to type this 2,000 times? Even if you're copying and pasting each line, that's still a lot of work. And of course, there's a better way, as you can imagine. And so let's take a look at that. So we're opening a file, and I may have forgotten to mention, this is for reading. Right? This is the actual file name, and then this is for reading. Because we could also open a file to write, or we could open a file to append data to. But we're just opening this to read. So let's modify this so that we can read without having to write all these lines. So I'm going to come up here above this, and I'm going to say, let me see. I think maybe right here would be a good spot to, we're just going to comment all these out for now. They're kind of in the way. We're going to call this line. We're going to get the numbers from here. We're going to say while line doesn't equal nothing, right? If when you get to the end of a file, this is what Python is going to report back. So let's see. Let me back up a little bit. Let's just say, I think we just print this directly. We don't need to do anything to it. Yeah, let's just print the line out. And then we'll go ahead at this point and read in the next line. So we'll take this and I think we just paste that there. Yeah, save us a little bit of typing. So and then we close the file, and then we don't need this anymore because we're not going to print down below. We're actually going to print this in the while loop here. So let's think this through and make sense. We open the file. It's referenced in numbers. We pull the first line out of the file. We say, give me the first line. And then we need to know how many additional lines there are. We don't know. So we run the while loop. And while this is not empty, right? If it returns an empty string, we know that it's finished. So it could be if the file is empty, then this is empty, line is empty, this never executes at all. But we know that we have data in the file, right? We know what we have, it's right here. And so then I believe this will run just fine. And it gives us the exact same. Let's add some more in. We couldn't do this earlier without creating more variables, could we? We'll save this, we'll run it again. And you see how it brought each number in, they match. So this is a more flexible way, a more scalable way of reading data from a file. And there are lots of other ways too that are really beyond the scope of this course. So let's clear all this out for a moment. That's reading data. What about writing data to a file? That's pretty important. We can say let's say we're going to play around with a file called, maybe the content will be something to do with movies. And let's see, output.text. And this time, remember last time we typed in R, this time we're going to type in a W. W for write. Last time we were reading. These are very important because if you wanted to read a file like we were doing just a moment ago, but you put a W here instead, it's actually going to overwrite the content of that file. You'll lose the data in that file. So read, write, I mean, it has real meaning. It's, it's not just random characters on the screen. So let's see. Same thing, I guess, last time. We'll say movies dot write, and we'll pick some movie names here called Matrix. And these are strings, by the way. And I'm just using single quote because they're a little easier to type. And when I input a movie into this file, I want it to go to the next line. I don't want it all on one line. Remember I told you that new line character a few moments ago? This invisible character through here? Well, it is there, and this is what we're going to add to our text. So let's see, maybe the Gladiator and I don't know, Star Wars. You can't think of a movie, Star Wars is always something that pops in your head. And let's say movies.close. We have to close the file when we're done. This lets Python know, which lets the operating system know that we're done with the file, which is important. Eventually, Python will get around to closing these files anyway, but it's just a really good programming practice to go ahead and close the file. Now, I'm just writing this because at this point, if we ran the file without this print line, nothing's going to show it. It'll be like we didn't do anything. You won't see anything here because we're not reading data from the file. We're writing data to the file. So if this works like I think it should, we should see a output file containing these movies. So let's see what happens. It didn't crash, so that's good. It means we didn't make a mistake. And now we have output, which is what we were expecting, right? Output, output. Here we go. And there we go. These are our files. These are our movies. Matches up. That's what we said. Now, what if we were to come up here, try maybe a slightly different approach, something that's more commonly seen and not so academic, so to speak. Let's say if we have a movie list and it equals maybe Matrix again, going to be unoriginal and go back with these same names. And whoops, I meant to put the comma on the outside of that and fat fingered that. All right, then Gladiator, and then Star Wars. That's our movie list. Then, yep, we're opening up our file for writing again. And let's see. We don't need these anymore, I don't think here. Let's see. Yeah, instead of doing this, let's just write up top here for a second. Let's see, for movie in movie list. So for each movie, we're going to get each one of these out one at a time. And let's write. Actually, I'm sorry. We need to go to movies, the file, right? You need to write to that the movie name, right? Because it's going to loop through. It's going to grab the Matrix on the first run, Gladiator on the second, Star Wars on the third. So yeah, we'll write each one of these to, and let's say we want to do a new line character. Because if we don't want all this data to be run on one line, and you can't tell where one stops and the other one starts. I don't think we need that anymore. So yeah, this should work. So we'll see what this does. Let's run this. It says it's done. Let me close all of these out here. Come over here and check our output file. And the movies are there. Let's just, for the sake of let's run this again and see if, it appears. So our program is working as expected. And There's one more thing we can talk about as well. Let's say after we're done here, we want to, let's say we change our mind. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this. We finished writing there. Let's paste this here. And let's say append now. We want to append new data. We changed our mind, or we found some more data we want to write. Programs frequently do this. You write something and then later you want to write something else again. It's very, very common. And let's say that we want to, so we open the file back up, we put append on it, and let's just hard code something in here. Let's put maybe a movie called Second Hand Lions in here. Let's just go ahead and put the new line character in there. So we'll write that, and then we'll close it again. Right? We'll go ahead and close this, and we'll put finished writing. And let's just comment all this out, because we know that we have a file called output, and it has data in it right now. See, the data is already there, so we don't need to put it in there again. And let's append something else to this. Let's open this file up and append something else to it. Let's run this, and let's see. And Secondhand Lions was placed in there after. So that's a demonstration of reading and writing and appending. Now, interestingly, again, if we meant to read and we actually put a W, it's going to overwrite our file. And that's why I'm going to show you an example here where instead of appending, I'm just going to write. So what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen when I run this now? Before, it appended this to it when we had A, but now that we have W, it should overwrite everything in the file with just Secondhand Lions, and it did. We go back to append mode. When we run this twice, how many times should Secondhand Lions be there? It should be there 3 times. It was already there once, and then we ran it twice, and it's there 3 times.